Howdy, folks. Tyler from the Figure It Out crew here, coming at you today with a little bit of a change of pace video. We have noticed that our videos on the HasLab projects, most recently the HasLab LAAT LAT Gunship, have garnered quite a few views and have actually started some really good conversations in the comments. And as such, I thought it would be maybe a good idea to look at what some of the other content creators out there have had to say about this project and just react to that live. It's not quite the same as us having the opportunity to have conversations with some of these other creators, but we think it's the next best thing. So, with that in mind, I want to take a look at a video by RetroBlasting. I believe this gentleman's name is Michael. Seen some of his content in the past, not super familiar with his channel or anything, but I did see that he had a video on the LAT gunship and thought, you know what, let's take a look at it with our folks and react to it live. So without further ado, let's get it going.
My inbox starts blowing up yesterday about this HasLab that just got completed. And I'd kept my eyes on it a little bit, but I was getting a play-by-play from some of my close friends, and I was working on this marathon sell-off of a lot of stuff that I've been doing for something else that I'm trying to get done. Been the August and September so far of 2025 for me. And they said, hey, this is like 3 days ago. They said, hey, that thing doesn't look like it's going to fund. And I said, well, how could it? I said, not only have they made that thing, that LAT gunship or whatever it is, not only have they made that thing like what, 5 times or something in the past, like it's at least 5 or 6 different paint jobs with various releases with various combos of accessories. I said, but it doesn't have good tiers.
So yeah, he's not wrong. I mean, the gunship has been made in multiple variations, multiple configurations. We talked about that on our video, and I would argue that what they built originally that they released at retail, that mold was a good mold. It needed some updating. It needed to get that vintage collection treatment, in my opinion, to really upscale the detail and make things a little less play oriented and a little more collector oriented, which they've done on this project. They did some other things they didn't need to do. To his point, they made it bigger. But other than that, it's not that different from what we already have. When mine shows up, I suspect I tell you I will do a side by side with one of my existing gunships, and I don't expect to see that much more. There's going to be some things that are different, but I'm not sure it's going to be the night and day difference that I was hoping to get. And I certainly, again, we've talked about this. It doesn't need to be upscaled, so not a big fan of that. I think he's about to talk about the tiers though, so let's get into that.
So nobody's getting excited. This is like the Black Series Rancor all over again in terms of tiers. The HasLabs have had some quality control problems recently with the.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Rancor Black Series tiers. I will tell you that the tiers for the HasLab gunship, again, I share this opinion. They're super weak. They are very weak in my opinion. I have zero interest in any of those tiers. I don't care about getting any of those things. In fact, I'm a bit of a completionist when it comes to my collections, but I can tell you that since we did get gifted, somehow snuck across the line and got tier 1, this will probably be the first time that I take a collector's item like this, separate out the figure, the extra figure from that tier, and see if it's worth anything on the secondary market. I'm going to sell it because I don't want it. I don't care about it. It has no appeal to me whatsoever. And the other 2 tiers, same thing. Very unimpressive, pretty low effort in my opinion, in terms of creating things that are coming up with things that people actually want. That being said, that's just my opinion. I don't know what letters or what communications or what HasLab is receiving from fans or what they're asking for. I can tell you that I do try to stay in touch with a lot of the Reddit channels and a lot of the social media accounts that follow these things that I also am interested in, and I have not seen a huge calling for any of the three Jedi that they released as tiers. So I can tell you what my opinion is. Definitely, 0 out of 10 on quality of tiers. And what I've seen out there is a lot of people share that opinion. I don't think this was a very good choice in terms of coming up with tiers.
Optimus Prime, and now they've gone ahead and taken that proton pack and re-released it with a slightly different tooling on it, like a revision of it, for $100 less than what the HasLab people paid for it to crowdfund it back during Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Guys, that really hurts. That stings me. Um, that stings me. He's getting me right in the feels with that. We haven't talked about this, I don't think, a whole lot on the channel. I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. Um, Original Ghostbusters, okay. Um, the new stuff is okay. There's a project that happened in the middle there that we won't talk about because it shouldn't have the name Ghostbusters. It's awful. But the original Ghostbusters, huge fan. Always wanted a proton pack. Always wanted a nice replica proton pack. I was really excited when Hasbro had the HasLab for the Ghostbusters Afterlife proton pack. I already had ordered the neutrino wand, which they sold at retail, that actually connects to that proton pack. So I was super excited when that came out. I was a day one backer on that proton pack. So excited. I wished very much at the time that it had been an original Ghostbusters proton pack and not the Afterlife modded proton pack, but the changes weren't huge. So I was like, all right, this is cool. It's close enough. I'm good. I'm in. Let's go. And I did see, I don't know if it's 6 months ago or whatever, but I did see that basically Hasbro remodeled that proton pack that was a HasLab project back to the original proton pack, and then they have released it and are selling it at retail for, to his point, $100 less than I paid for the HasLab version of the same thing. And I got the Afterlife skin and not the original skin. And I got to tell you guys, that really burns me up. I feel like Hasbro owes me a free exchange at a bare minimum, or a $100 refund for backing that project back then, because they clearly took the money from that project and invested it in retooling the mold and decided they could get some more money out of it and offered it up again. That to me is a core violation of everything that a HasLab is supposed to be. That should not happen to a HasLab, and it is not different enough to justify that. It's the better version, in my opinion. It's what it should have been originally, but it is not different enough to justify that. That when I saw that, I about blew a gasket. That's Hasbro. You owe us big time for that. That was a huge no, and really goes against everything that I understood a HasLab to be. So that hits me right in the feels. Big Ghostbusters fan. I'm one of the guys who backed that HasLab and got stung pretty bad on that. So um, that's bad behavior.
So HasLab has been, what's the word they use in corporate America? Experiencing some headwinds.
They use
The
that term.
PR on HasLab is not great at the moment in the toy collecting arena. This is one of the first times where, when they announced this HasLab, I saw people that are notorious corporate simps, pro corporate simps within the toy collector culture, come out, and even they said, this don't make no sense.
Yeah, this he's going right at those the fanboys there, the corporate fanboys. That's interesting. Um, I don't know if I've seen the overall reputation of HasLab being poor in the community. I would wager that Michael is more plugged into the community than I am, so I would have to take his word for it on that. I personally, my biggest gripes with the HasLab, um, tactically, if you will, is like the Cobra Rattler. I got my Cobra Rattler almost a full 2 months after they started shipping. Your fulfillment window should not be that wide on something like that. That's a lot ridiculous. And there's clearly some logistics problems that they have that they, you know, should have had sorted out by now fairly easily. And the fact that that's still happening is pretty disappointing. So, I saw Rattlers get resold 2 or 3 times before mine showed up, and I was a day one backer on that. At the very least, first in, first out, guys. If you're gonna have crappy logistics, at least the people that back it early ship theirs first. My opinion. What do I know about anything?
What was HasLab supposed to be? What was the hill that a lot of you guys died on back in 2018 when they announced the sail barge? When myself and a scant few others were saying that could sell at retail. You guys said, no, they've never made this before and it would never sell at retail now. So we have to.
Sail barge would have sold at retail. It would have. Sounds like this guy's maybe anti-HasLab from the start.
Use a crowd fund. Okay. And it funded at, what was it, $400? And this new drop ship, which is nowhere near 5.5 feet long, and it's $450, but we'll ride right past that.
I don't know if you should ride right past that. I mean, I think that's, if you go back and look at our video, that was my core objection to what they've done here, is that the value is not there for what they're asking for this thing. That's a great point. The sail barge was much bigger. It was unique. It had way better tiers. Like, it's on a whole nother level, and it was less expensive than the gunship. And it's not that long ago. Yes, I know there's tariffs and there's prices increases on material goods and all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't justify the difference in the price between those two. It just doesn't.
You guys bought into that. The beast is now free to, come out of, the Lonely Mountain and attack Lake Town. And then on the next
Hobbit
subsequent view,
nice.
Like the Razor Crest and the Ghost, it was always, well, they would never make these at retail. That's why these things would never be sold at retail.
Razor Crest was the first HasLab I actually backed. Still have it, still in the box. Actually, haven't opened it. And I was super excited about it. Still, I'm very happy to have it. Again, it would have sold at retail. All of these projects that I've seen from HasLab would have sold at retail. The ones that they would have sold, the Rancor would have sold at retail, guys. Maybe not to the degree that it needed to justify it, but it would have sold at retail.
Meanwhile, the Black Series Rancor HasLab tanked. And I point that out to say that Hasbro has completely pulled all real support for the vintage collection. They only put out a smattering of items at retail every year. They want to get away from it, they claim, because they say people only buy 6-inch scale.
Is this true? I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I've tracked the releases for the vintage collection year over year to see that they've actually slowed down or pulled support or stopped. I've still seen, we got the Razor Crest, obviously, is a HasLab. We've got the Naboo Starfighter, the N1 modded for the Mandalorian. We got that in the vintage collection. We got the E-Wing in the vintage collection. I mean, I'm a vehicle guy, so that's kind of what I focus on. But we've seen a fairly steady release of vintage collection. We just got a re-release of Luke's Red 5 X-Wing in the vintage collection. So vehicle-wise, I think they're probably about where they typically have been. I can't speak for the figs necessarily on what their release rate looks like compared to that. I honestly think I like 6-inch scale. I collect G.I. Joe classified. I've actually gotten away. I'm the opposite. I've stopped collecting Black Series. I am collecting G.I. Joe classified, but I really like the 3 3/4 inch scale because the vehicles, again, I'm a vehicle guy, are much smaller. The 6-inch scale vehicles get a little bit ridiculous. I genuinely don't know where the Snowcat is going to go. When I get that HasLab Snowcat for the 6-inch scale, the classified Snowcat, I don't know where that's going to go. And there's a lot of vehicles that are bigger than that I desperately want, and I think they might be too big for most of us to display anywhere. So I'm kind of the opposite. I think that the 3 3/4 inch is a good place to go. As much as I love the 6-inch stuff too. I don't know. Somebody tell me. Does anybody have any data on this? Can anybody show me, releases and show me that they're actually backing off of vintage collection? I'd be curious to see it.
Now. And yet 6-inch scale doesn't succeed with crowdfunding.
Maybe in Star Wars, if you're talking about the Rancor, it just succeeded in the G.I. Joe Classified. It succeeded before that in the G.I. Joe His Tank. So it could be that he's only talking about the Star Wars franchise here, but we are seeing 6-inch crowdfunding stuff go through. I think everything G.I. Joe they've put out in HasLab has funded. We saw the Rattler, we've seen the Dragonfly, we've seen the His Tank, and now we've seen the Snowcat. All of them funded, and all of them funded pretty easily. The Snowcat might have been the one that was the slowest to fund. But I don't think it was ever really in question. The gunship that we're talking about here was very much in question. I'm curious to know what he has to say about how that finished and how it snuck across the finish line.
Meanwhile, all of the vintage collection 3 3/4 inch scale Star Wars projects on HasLab have done, up until this one, astronomically well. And so I wonder, with prices rising and tariffs going crazy and the price of plastic going up all the time, because those are Hasbro's constant excuses, why aren't they switching gears and going back to just focusing on the vintage collection as a scale and a run of dominant Star Wars products? Because it seems like people still really want them at that scale so they can world build. Cantina, anyone?
I didn't back the Cantina. I have no interest in that. Zero.
But now we get to the point with this drop ship.
It's a gunship. You could call it a drop ship. It does technically drop troops into battle, but it's a gunship, my friend.
And you can no longer use the excuse that this thing wouldn't do well at retail, because it's already been at retail like 5 times. Now, I know they say, well, this one's bigger. Okay, it's bigger. But clearly, so many people who usually would come out and support Hasbro's corporate predatory crowdfunding, even they came out and said, yeah, this doesn't make any sense as far as HasLab's stated mission.
That I agree with. This doesn't make sense as far as HasLab's stated mission. It's not a dream project that you couldn't do any other way. He's absolutely right. The gunship has gone to retail and has sold at retail. It didn't fly off the shelves of retail, but remember, the versions that he's talking about have been the non-vintage collection versions. They have been a little bit more play oriented and less collector oriented, and there's a big difference in selling something. And I believe they were still $120 or $100. I think the last time I saw one at Toys R Us, many years ago. I remember thinking I want to buy like 5 of those, but they're too expensive. So I bought one. But I remember thinking that this is a lot of money for a toy. And I wonder how many people, and there wasn't any shortage. I can tell you right now, Toys R Us, I still remember it because I think back on it fondly. They had a whole wall of gunships. So there wasn't an issue with having enough in stock. They had plenty of them. They weren't exactly flying off the shelves. They 100% sold. Every one of them eventually sold. Like that happened. I don't think they had any trouble selling it. But there's a difference between selling a toy at $100, $150 versus a collector's item at $200, $250, maybe even $300. Your audiences are different, and you can do that and get away with it. They could have sold this gunship at retail to collectors, and it would have been just fine. It does not need to be crowdfunded. It should not have been crowdfunded. I agree with that.
HasLab's mission statement is, we're going to bring you the dream items that you thought you could never have. Well, we've already had the drop ship 4, 5, 6 times. I don't even remember how many times we've had.
Yeah, I would actually be really curious. I probably will never happen, but I would really love to talk to someone at Hasbro and say, hey, we know what the HasLab mission statement was at the beginning. It has obviously changed. It's obviously changed. You may not have changed it publicly, but you have obviously had some kind of internal memo or internal system or internal whatever that has gone out and said, we're changing the mission statement of HasLab. It's no longer dream projects that couldn't get any other way. Classified Snowcat easily could have gone at retail, would have been tremendously successful, no problem. Gunship, Clone Gunship, easily could have gone retail, would have had no problem. Um, really, I would argue the Dragonfly and the Rattler, same story. Like those all could have gone retail. His tank could have gone retail. Ghost could have gone retail. Again, it's a collector's item. People would have, especially with the tiers, people would have bought that at retail. So I would agree. I will say I think the Ghost is still meets that mission statement of dream project because maybe they don't make something that big and that out there without a HasLab type of product. But the Gunship does not meet that standard, and so I would love to hear Hasbro come out and correct that mission statement and tell us what it really is now. Because it certainly is not dream projects. It wouldn't happen any other way. I agree with him there.
At it. But now it's slightly bigger. That's thin, Riggs. And more than a few people
Lethal Weapon reference. Very nice.
were saying it. The foundations in the whole hype train for these HasLabs amongst the toy collector culture is starting to crack. So then we get to 3 or 4 days before the end of the campaign. It's looking pretty grim.
Yep, it was.
And then all of a sudden there was this boost, and it jumped up to like, they needed 8,000 backers, and it jumped up to like 6,200 or something from 4,800 or something like that. Just like that, just poof. And they weren't there yet, but they were clearly in a better position to.
Yeah, that was. I'm hoping he understands. I'm hoping he has some kind of explanation for what that is because I don't understand what that is, and it very much happened in like a few hours. It was not a. It was basically one big chunk of a jump. It was not a. It was not a rapid succession of increasing orders. It was like a big instantaneous jump, bigger than what you could get from one person coming in and buying a bunch. Because again, one order is limited to 5 units. So let's see if he knows what caused that.
Whether the next, I don't know, 12, 18 hours, whatever it was. And I saw the chatter and people were saying, oh, well, that's probably the retailers just trying to get in on that because the retailers who want to buy multiples usually jump in within the last few hours. But even they might not be enough to save this, much like the Rancor.
So are retailers allowed to buy more than 5? Is maybe not a retailer, maybe some kind of distributor? I mean, I don't think that's how HasLab is supposed to work. I could be wrong. Because it's supposed to go to individuals that are backing it. I'm not aware of any retail, like Big Bad Toy Stores or other guys like that are retail storefronts hawking HasLabs, at least in the United States. Maybe that's a overseas thing.
Because the tiers aren't any good.
They're not good.
And then within the last 7 to 9 hours, whatever it was, the thing broke through, and it got to about, I guess, 9,000 and change number of backers, which means no tiers were unlocked, none.
So this video, I think, was made. It's not that old. Is it just a few days ago? His friends who have been blowing up his inbox have let him down. They haven't informed him that we did get tier 1. So we did get that first tier. I'm not excited about it, but we did get it. I'd love to know how that happened. We haven't talked about that on the channel, but somehow we closed out. Like we definitely finished below 10,000, and then Hasbro came back the next day and was like, by the way, here's some extra orders or something else that we hadn't counted yet, and congratulations, we unlocked tier 1. So love to know what's going on there. I don't think it's anything malicious, but I absolutely think that there were orders being held back that weren't being displayed. There have to be, because I was watching it all the way up until it closed, and we did not get to 10,000. So they added some extra orders that came from somewhere that weren't showing up on the web page. So again, doesn't mean it's malicious, but there definitely are not properly tracking orders on that web page, which could lead to people buying more than they normally would to try to push it across the finish line. You know, that's not great.
Now, I've seen some of the talk saying, "Oh, is Hasbro pulling a fast one?" I don't think so.
I agree. I don't think it's malicious.
It is suspicious timing. Like, it's very suspicious timing. I just think we're still experiencing kind of the death throes of fear of missing out. People weren't happy about this, but when they saw it getting close, even though you don't get the full value for it because you didn't unlock any of the tiers, all these people jumped in at the last minute on an item that doesn't qualify as not having proven itself at retail or never been released.
Guilty. I'm guilty of this. I didn't jump in at the last minute. It wasn't FOMO. I wanted this. I have called my shot on a Vintage Collection Gunship for a long time, and I wanted it. And I backed it, I don't know, a couple weeks into the campaign. Backed a couple of them because I wanted it. And readily and freely admit that the value was not there and that I was going to overpay for this thing because I wanted it. So I'm guilty of that. At least in my case, it wasn't a FOMO situation. It was this is something I have wanted for a very, very, very long time. And even though it's not my ideal version of it, I'm going to get it.
Even though the Mandalorian was super popular and the Razor Crest would have sold at retail, they were able to couch their argument in this, flimsy technicality of, well, it would just never sell.
Yeah,
well, you don't know because you didn't try.
It would have sold.
Sail Barge, same thing. Ghost, same thing.
It would have sold.
Mos Eisley Cantina.
Interesting enough, the Ghost Hunter, I can tell you the Ghost would have sold. I didn't back the Ghost. I made a decision not to back the Ghost. I'm not the biggest Rebels fan in terms of Star Wars, but I like that ship. I do love the hero ships of Star Wars, and I regret not backing the Ghost, to be perfectly frank with everybody here. At some point, I'll probably source one. Fortunately, they're not selling for outrageous markups right now because they were already so darn expensive, and frankly, people don't have anywhere to put something that big, but it would have sold at retail. And I would have bought it at retail. Like, I'm one of the examples of people that as soon as I saw that box, I would have bought it. Wouldn't have been able to stop. I would have bought it.
Probably the same thing, given how ravenous people were for it. You could have sold that at retail, but did a bunch of online pre-orders and been done with it. It's just weird to me how the toy culture, the collector culture, has come out and just acquiesced once again to what I'm now calling, the Shartimus principle. I like toys. You're mad.
I don't know that reference. I do like toys. I don't understand that reference. So somebody help me out.
About the crowd fund. This time, so mad about it that the rumblings began once the thing was announced. The moment the thing was announced, people were understandably upset. It's like people were finally waking up.
100% this thing hit headwinds like the minute it was announced. People were like, what in the world? That's very true. More than any HasLab I've seen by a landslide.
But then at the very last second, everybody capitulates. Barely. They didn't get any of the tiers unlocked. So some people have woken up. Some people have said, shenanigans. This isn't worth it. And so now,
I'd love to have a discussion live with this guy. We agree on a lot of things. We disagree on some things. This is this is an interesting take.
Hasbro once again has been taught the wrong lesson, which is it's a little tighter this time. But people will buy anything.
So this is something that I talked about in our episode, and it was one of the reasons that I used to justify myself going ahead and backing the gunship. I firmly believe that Hasbro would not get the right message if it failed. I don't think Hasbro would get the correct message if it failed. The message they would get is, oh, we can't do anything prequel, we can't do anything clones, we can't do any of that stuff because it's just going to fail miserably and nobody wants it, and that is not true. Um, so that's one of the ways I justified it to myself is Hasbro was not going to get the right message if this didn't fund. He's arguing that they got the wrong message because it did fund, and that could very well be true as well. It was probably a lose-lose for us, honestly, except a little bit of a win because I get a vintage collection gunship, which frankly, and I am overpaying for it. It's not worth what I'm paying for it. Still excited about it.
If you make it, they will buy it. We can shove whatever we want at them, even something that's already been made 5 times.
Again, I'm going to disagree with you there. There have been multiple things that have failed, multiple HasLab projects that have failed. The Machine of Vengeance, the Ghost Rider car failed. The stupid uh, gosh, well, I can't even think of what they're such a silly thing. The Inquisitor, is it Inquisitors? Dual that spinning lightsaber from one of the sisters failed miserably. The Rancor failed miserably. So, I mean, they've had plenty of failures to let them know, like, hey, if you're way off base, you're not gonna it's not gonna sell. So it's not true. It's not true to say that people will buy anything because they have had failures in HasLab.
We just have to make it a little bigger. And Hasbro will say, "Oh, it's economic headwinds and people are tightening their belts, so that's why we didn't have as many people on this HasLab." Could it actually be that the price was too high, the tiers were too lousy, and the item had already been available in 4, 5, 6 other iterations over the last 20 years?
Yes to the first two. I'm not so sure on the third because while it has been available in multiple versions over the last 20 years, it's pretty darn expensive to acquire now in good condition on the secondary market, and it's especially complete. So there's still some demand out there. Now they're not selling like hotcakes. I saw a lot of people justifying this project and the price because of some of the prices that they were selling for on eBay, and I challenge those people to go to eBay and look at sold listings and understand that they're selling one of those at the $300 to $400 price range. You probably see one of those a month or one of those every 2 months that sells. That's a far cry from 8,000 people in 6 months or 6 weeks or 8 weeks of backing a project. So they're not selling very fast. Some of them do sell for that, but they don't sell very fast and they don't sell very often at that price. But they are selling for a pretty good price on the secondary market.
Could that not be the actual reason? HasLab is supposed to make your dreams come true. Okay. Where's the Star Destroyer? Where's the Mega Death Star action figure playset? Where is...
I would love to have a Star Destroyer. If you did that scaled properly, it literally wouldn't fit in a freaking garage. They're too big. I'm dead serious. You couldn't do a properly scaled Star Destroyer. It wouldn't fit in a garage. Same for the Death Star. Even bigger. I realized that they would do funny things with the scales, and we're talking about smaller play sets. He's probably not talking about a Star Destroyer. He's probably talking about a Star Destroyer play set and a Death Star play set. So they would scale them down. Still, those would be huge. Bookshelf size, like entire bookshelf size at least. I am not sure there are enough people that could back something like that. Number one, the cost would be tremendous. Number two, the space required is unbelievably massive. I think you would to do either one of those, you would have to at least in a vintage collection, you would have to at least be on the same scale as a USS Flag and probably bigger, because the reality is both of those would be much bigger than an aircraft carrier. Um, and so to do that right, you would have to be even bigger than the USS Flag. And if that thing is monstrous, and it is very difficult for people to display it because it is so big.
The Bespin freeze chamber in Cloud City environment. Where are those? Those are the, if you build it, they will come, kind of situations. Those are the fields of dreams. And I'll chalk the sail barge up in there as one. Like I said, if that had been at retail, I would have bought it.
Sounds like he's very anti-HasLab everything all the time, period. We could talk about that. I do. I think there's an argument to be made that a company as big as Hasbro, the largest toy company in the world, as far as I know, doesn't need to be crowdfunding anything. Like they're big enough to not need to do that. Interesting.
But this doesn't make any sense, and it just seems to me, like Hasbro has trained their buyers, and when you've got websites like Yakface trying to be supplemental marketing monsters for HasLab, you got all these collector websites. A few of the collector websites that have given me a hard time in the past, even they were the ones that were like, yeah, this isn't a good value proposition. It's like, how could it be? Some of them, though, like Yakface, were still hawking this thing, trying to get people to get it across the line so they could get their toy.
Yeah, he obviously doesn't like some of these guys that tend to be a little bit more. I mean, obviously, somebody like Yakface, I don't know all the details, guys. I don't know the story. The guy gets a lot of scoops. He gets a lot of information. He's obviously being given information by Hasbro intentionally to help drive the hype train. And that's just a corporate thing. Like, doesn't make him, it's not good or bad. That's just the reality of corporate, being corporate. And so, I know it rubs some people the wrong way, and I understand why it does. It certainly opens those folks that are receiving that goodness from the companies. You certainly have to take everything that they're presenting to you with a grain of salt, because they have a bias, whether they realize it or not, or whether they admit it or not. They 100% have a bias because they're being fed. They're now being fed by the corporate machine. It doesn't, but I have no opinions on Yakface one way or the other in regards to that. I do think that this campaign specifically relied heavily on grassroots movements among the fans to try to drive it across the finish line. So we gave them kudos in our episode talking about this for the work they did to go push it. Listen, I understand Michael doesn't like that. He's not happy with the way that this turned out. I don't think you can really fault people for being enthusiastic and going and trying to share their enthusiasm for something that they're really excited about with somebody else. He and I agree that the value is not there. We disagree on backing it. Obviously, I did. I bought it, acknowledging the value is not there. But it's not my place to tell somebody else what the what it's worth to them. So I have no problem with people getting excited about this and going and jumping on the hype train and trying to help drive it across the finish line. Let people be excited about what they're excited about. Just because you're not doesn't mean that they won't be, and just because the value's not there for you doesn't mean the value's not there for them. A lot of the folks that I talked to about this project were too young to get the gunship when it was available at retail, so they missed that opportunity, and that's why they want to get a new one in the box for themselves. And this was for them a net new opportunity. So anyway,
And so a toy that's been released 4, 5, 6 times. I can't remember how many gunships there have been before. I know there have been quite a number of them. It got released again. slightly bigger. And somehow that's a HasLab dream project that was risky.
No, it
Didn't
wasn't.
get any tiers though. So everybody bought the full $450 value.
It got tier 1. He's missing that piece of information. That's okay. It came after the campaign closed.
Value without unlocking any of the extra stuff that Hasbro baked into it that you are now walking away from. Well, you're not walking away from it, you're locked out of it.
You can cancel your order. I don't remember. I don't know if this is unique to the gunship or not because I've never tried to go cancel a HasLab order. But I do remember getting in my Hasbro orders and seeing that I had the option after the campaign closed to cancel my gunship order. So it's not fair to say that they couldn't walk away from it because they could. Even if you backed it on day 1 after it closed, you had a window, and maybe it's still open. I haven't looked, but there was a time where you could cancel that order.
But that means that they get to put a bunch of money back in their pocket that they anticipated would be part of the final value when all those extra things were added, but they weren't added. So
I agree. I think the price for the tiers is built into the price of the original product. I do believe that. Um, I will argue that there is, it's economies of scale. So the reason that the tiers are tied to a number of backers is because they want to make a certain amount of money, and that amount of money requires a certain number of backers against the tiers that they're adding. So in this case, they only got to tier 1. Yes, Hasbro's pocketing the extra money on those 10,000 backers, but they would prefer to give you a couple more figures and pocketed the extra profit on the extra 4,000 backers to get all the way to tier 3. It's neither here nor there in terms of what you think about the project. I would suppose, but it's fair to point out that there's a reason they tie the tiers to a certain number of backers because they want to get. They're going to give you those extra figures. They want to get a little bit extra money. They want to make a certain amount of money, and they need more backers to make that amount of money with extra stuff thrown in. That's what it boils down to.
you guys out there who are starting to see this for what it is, kudos. I commend you. But some of you guys are still emboldening Hasbro to keep giving us less while demanding more of our wallet. Are we really going to sit there and say that that drop ship was a great candidate for a HasLab and that it was something that really, should be seen as a project of a magnitude of this is the only way we're ever going to get it when we literally already got it? And what does that teach HasLab on the next go around? Do they release the Legacy Falcon again as a HasLab and say, oh, well, this time we've painted it to look exactly like Return of the Jedi? I mean, are they going to build a slightly bigger X-Wing? A slightly big...
No, they've already got a Vintage Collection X-Wing. They're not going to build another one. I tell you what I would buy is if they would take the mechanism to expand the S-foils that Poe's T-70 X-Wing has, the button, instead of the stupid lever that Luke's Red 5 that they keep reproducing over and over and over. That technology it's like from the 90s, that design, and they have done nothing to improve it except they did design a new mechanism with the T-70 they released for Poe's. It is so much better. It is so much better. I would buy that if they would redesign the X-wing with that. But no, they're not going to make a bigger X-wing because they're already releasing an X-wing in the Vintage Collection. I think he's missing the. Yes, they've released gunships, but they haven't released gunships under the brand of the Vintage Collection, which has a collector. At least my interpretation of the Vintage Collection is this is a collector grade of thing, not a toy grade of thing. So it's an elevated thing, and they've already got they've already got Vintage Collection X-Wings, so no, they're not going to do that.
Bigger TIE fighter? Is that what is now the future of HasLab?
No, Vintage Collection stuff that it already exists. They're not going to re-release Vintage Collection upscaled for HasLab. That's not going to happen. I think he's going a little too far off the rails here. Obviously, he's frustrated and not happy with Hasbro's doing it. He's making some great points about some of the things that they are doing that they shouldn't be doing, but he's going too far here. Like that's not going to happen.
Which, you give that mouse a cookie, and back in 2018, you guys gave that mouse the cookie that it wanted. And now they're just pretending like they don't even know what the auspices of this whole endeavor were. Oh, was it about dream projects that have never been done before?
Yeah, okay, so you agree that you've said multiple times in this video that you agree the sail barge meets the Dream Project criteria. I agree with you that it would sell at retail, but you've agreed that it meets the Dream Project criteria. Sounds like he's kind of upset with people who backed it in 2018, even though he agrees it's more of a dream project, and Hasbro probably would not, even though we agree that it would have sold at retail, they probably would not have taken the risk on that. So I get it, but I think we're arguing against. He's kind of arguing against his own points here.
And possibly could never get done? Oh, I forgot about that. Here, would you like a $350 Tauntaun?
No.
That's 3 3/4 inch scale, by the way.
No.
Because Black Series stuff doesn't succeed. Only the 3 3/4 inch stuff does. The stuff that Hasbro.
So I don't. Again, I'm not retro blasting. I've seen some of his content before, and I've enjoyed it, and I am enjoying this content, believe it or not. Sounds to me like he's a lot bigger, a lot more fan of the Black Series, and not a fan of the Vintage Collection. Although he said earlier about how the Vintage Collection sells really well. I don't know. I'm trying to follow the frustration here.
Openly won't support anymore at retail. The situation's a mess, and it's kind of hilarious. It's hilarious to see. It's hilarious to see just how much people are willing to spend for so little.
I think that's a bit over the top. I agree. The gunship is overpriced and not undervalued. What's the word I want to say? The value is not there for the price. I agree with that. I think it's taking it too far to say you're getting so little with the gunship. You're getting a really cool vehicle. It comes with the full-scale gun pods, which have been historically the really hard thing for those of you that don't know on the gunship, and maybe Michael collects them, maybe he doesn't. The full-scale clone gun pods those are kind of the holy grail of the gunships. They're hard to find. They're very expensive. They were released. They were very limited when they were released, and like the first gunship, what you did is you bought the gunship, and then there was an option to buy a clone trooper as a figure. So it didn't come with the gunship, but you could buy that clone trooper figure, and it came with that pod that would then attach to your gunship. So you had to buy 2 of those, and they were pretty expensive figures back in the day, and they're incredibly rare. They're incredibly rare. There's a bunch of guys out there 3D printing them now, so there's 3D printed knockoffs all over the place that are 50, 60 bucks a piece. But the real deal, last time I looked, they were going for around $100, $150 a piece for those pods. Like you could by the time you bought the 2 pods, you might pay more for the 2 pods, especially if you get the clones. You would pay more for the 2 gun pods than you would for the gunship as a whole. So you are getting that with these. You're getting the gun pods. You're getting some nice upscale detail. You're getting some swappable panels that you could, 2 that have already, pre-printed decorations, and 2, one for each side that you could decorate yourself, either paint yourself or find somebody making some really nice water slide decals and put them on there. So there's some stuff here that's pretty cool. So to say you're getting so little, that's a little bit much. Is it too expensive for what it is? 100% yes, it is. But I wouldn't say it's that makes it sound like you're getting a $50 toy for $450, and that's not the case. It's every bit of a $300 toy to $350 potentially. The big miss on the gunship, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, the big miss on the gunship is that they're not giving you a clone, a squad of clones or two squads of clones. They're not even giving you enough figures to fully outfit it. So the gun pods, you're not going to get enough clones to load up the gun pods. I think you're going to get two pilots. I hope you get two pilots. But I mean, you should at least get enough clones as part of this to completely crew out the gunship, and that's a huge miss. And we all know why Hasbro's doing that. They're going to sell you that stuff on the secondary market.
And I guess maybe the reason that I'm stymied is there's a crazy juxtaposition going on in my world right now where I'm putting most of my modern toys and stuff like that up for sale, and I'm selling some vintage stuff, and I'm streamlining my collection to try and get it to a place where it's truly the stuff that I'm passionate about and not just stuff to throw in videos here and there, but to really enjoy my space in a new way after 10 years. And meanwhile, like,
having just moved, I 100% feel that. Like, one of the things that was very clear to me as I was packing for the move is I have got to trim down the collection. So I completely know where he's coming from there. Like, let's narrow it down to what we really want.
If you're a Star Wars prequel guy and you just can't live without this, and the other 5 versions didn't cut it, then okay.
Again, I'm going to say that's a slightly unreasonable argument. It could be that you're a Star Wars prequel fan and you didn't have the opportunity to buy the other 5 versions because you were too young, you didn't have the money when they were being released. Like, not everybody had access to that. Was old enough, number one, or number two, had access financially, because those were still expensive toys. So I don't think that's fair to just say that the other 5 weren't good enough, so you're going to buy this one. I mean, there's people out there that are passionate about this. This is, I've told you, this is one of my favorite vehicles in Star Wars. It goes back and forth between this and the ARC 170, which are both prequel vehicles, and I'm a hardcore original trilogy guy, but vehicle wise, the prequels have some of the best stuff, and I don't think it's fair to say that the other 5 didn't do it for you. Well, they may not have had the opportunity to get the other 5 brand new at retail. Yes, you can buy them on the secondary market, somebody else's used toys. You're almost always going to have to clean them up. I mean, listen, I've bought a bunch of these. I've probably owned 7 or 8 over the years, still own 3. And you always have to do a ton of cleanup. You always have to, there's always missing parts, even when they say they're complete. So there's something to be said for somebody that wants one of these that they bought brand new, whether they keep the box or not, or keep it in the box or not, getting it brand new in the box. There's something to be said for that. So I don't think that's quite fair. Let's dial that back just a touch, my opinion, and give some folks the benefit of the doubt here.
But I don't think anybody can say with a straight face that this LAAT Republic Gunship, or whatever the hell they call it, that this is a HasLab worthy project based on what Hasbro has stated HasLab is supposed to be.
Agreed.
And then to watch it just eke across that line, thanks to more than likely the help of scalpers, but there will be no extra.
Michael, you cannot scalp a HasLab. We talked about this in a video. We made a video for this. If I can figure out the wizardry, I'll link that video in this reaction video, but you can't scalp a HasLab. HasLabs are literally an unlimited supply product while they are in funding. So there is no limited supply to take advantage of and then go scalp. So you're talking about people that buy it and then resell it at a fair market price based on what the market says it is. Yeah, people do that. And you know what? That's okay. But it's not scalping, because there has to be a limited supply of something before you to scalp it, and HasLabs are unlimited supply while they're funding. So anybody that wants it, that has the money can go buy it.
To go with it. There are no Tonica sisters to go with this thing. You know, there's the I wait for the day that, and it's fast approaching, that they start charging $35, $40 for a 3 3/4 inch retail vintage collection style figure.
I agree with you. That's going to happen eventually. It's not. I don't think it's fast approaching. They did just raise the price on the 6-inch stuff, at least the GI Joe classified stuff. Ironically, other companies that I passionately love, like Valaverse, have just lowered the price on theirs. So, interestingly enough, Valaverse being more of a boutique type product, and Hasbro being more of a mass production, price was down here for Hasbro, up here for Valaverse, and now it's actually about to switch because Valaverse just lowered their prices while Hasbro just raised theirs. This is 6-inch scale stuff, of course, but we are seeing Hasbro ration up the prices, and yes, eventually we're going to get to where they're that price, and it's going to be to all of us that bought the stuff for a couple bucks in our childhood up until $6 or $8 as adults or young adults. It's going to feel really, really gross. So, but I don't think it's fast approaching. I don't think that's going to happen in the next 5 years.
And at that point, I would like to know, because what did I tell you HasLab would teach Hasbro? I told you back in 2018 it would teach them that they can gouge us on everything, especially at retail. And they have been enjoying those price gouges.
I'm maybe I need to go try to track down this video. I'm not seeing how a HasLab project empowers Hasbro to gouge retail products. I don't. I'm not making that connection. I'm not following that logic.
Every other quarter since then. And here we are. I'll be very interested to see how many of you guys are still hanging on when those action figures are now $40 a hit. And then they announce another HasLab, and it's like something we've already seen a million times before, but just slightly bigger or repainted or whatever, and they're charging $500, maybe even by that time $600. How many of you are going to realize that you got to reclaim your bounty and bounce?
Depends on what it is. I mean, I'm not paying $40 for any 3 3/4 inch figure. But and I'm probably not paying $600 for any HasLab. But it just depends on what it is. I mean, if it was a Outrider and they did it right, like did it really right, maybe. Ebonhawk with the full crew from Old Republic. Yeah, I might. But again, if they do it right, those projects might be worth it.
HasLab, it's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Okay. All right, so that's RetroBlasting and his reaction to the HasLab Lat project. He's got a strong take on this, and it's not just a Lat. He's sounds like this guy's pretty anti-HasLab. Period. And I understand that. I think he makes some excellent points. And more than anything, he's clear. Excuse me. I'm sorry, guys. He's clearly a passionate toy collector. Sounds like he's pretty passionate about Star Wars. Sounds like he's pretty passionate about his love for some of the other franchises, based on what I've seen in his background that Hasbro also produces, and that he's frustrated by some of the things that Hasbro has done, and feels like HasLab is responsible for some of the woes that exist there. And he might be right, guys. I don't know. I'm not connected enough to know odds. I mean, I can tell you right now, he would probably know more than me because he's more connected and dialed into what's actually going on there. I believe. Um, but I also think that there's some very strong anti-HasLab bias that has carried over into his feelings on the gunship and taking something that he would normally probably look at and say this isn't worth it, and taking it to another level of that extra. We all have personal biases and personal feelings, and we get invested in things, and so I think that's probably part of the reason why he's as negative as he was on that campaign. We were on our channel. We're critical of the last two HasLabs, the Snowcat and the less so the Snowcat, but of the Snowcat and the Gunship both. We have been critical of both of those projects. So, but again, I backed them both. Super excited to get both of them. So I love the passion. Never going to fault anybody for being passionate about something and for having strong feelings, especially when they feel like something is negatively impacting a hobby that they're very passionate about. So I totally understand. Again, this is Retro Blasting. I've seen not all of his content, but I've seen some of his content. All of it has been good, including this video. So go check out his channel if you haven't already. If somehow you stumbled onto us before you found him, go check him out. Other than that, I've been Tyler for the Figure It Out cast. You guys take it easy.